Well, we're starting with the topic of leadership. 2022 is going to be the year where a lot of selection and, well, I use selection very carefully because even though they're going to be elected, the final elections will not take place until 2023. And you know that one of the contentious points in the Electoral Act, which was sent back by the president or vetoed by the president, is that clause on direct and indirect primaries. And sometimes in the indirect primaries method, it will seem that it's a selection that takes place. But whatever means parties agree to get their people, elected in their primaries is going to be happening in 2022. And there are questions as to, first, what sort of people should we be looking at? Should we leave political parties alone to their own devices and just wait for them to throw up the candidates for the people to vote? Or should the people be interested in what is happening in the political parties to say what sort of candidates they want to see thrown up by the political parties? To say that if political parties do not, bring up a minimum of a leader who meets a minimum quality or criteria of leadership which the people require, then perhaps that party is going to be suffering a rejection by the electorate. So there needs to be a conversation around that, and we hope to kickstart that just about now with Kenneth Okoineme, who is a member strategy team of the Not Too Young to Run movement, and also People for Change National Advisor, Nigeria, of Action Aid. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Good morning, and compliments of the season to Nigerians.
I wish you the same on behalf of Nigerians who perhaps are wishing you the same, but you cannot hear. It is quite a period that we're witnessing already. If you drive around Abuja now, I do not know about other cities. I've been here for quite a while now, but I'm sure if you drive around the Federal Capital Territory, you'll begin to see billboards put up either by supporters of potential candidates or even candidates by themselves who are looking to vie for different offices, some within their political parties, others already in preparation for 2023, especially the presidential hopeful, so to speak. So that is already beginning to happen in the Federal Capital Territory. I haven't seen the billboards of anyone who's young, so there'll be questions as to what gains have we seen so far from the Not Too Young to Run bill, which was passed into law.
Thank you, first and foremost, for having me this morning and for putting on the table this very pertinent question of leadership and what kind of leadership Nigerians should be looking forward to as the 2023 election comes by. I think, for me, one of the most important issues that we have to deal with is that first and foremost is that we recognize that leadership has always been a challenge in the country. It is well documented that we have had issues of leadership, and so therefore at this point in time that question around leadership now takes that front burner. And what should Nigerians be looking for in a leader that we want to see in 2023? But it is important to first and foremost put on the table some of these challenges so that we can recognize where we're coming from. And for me, one of the things that captures it most succinctly is even on the program you just had with the Honorable Minister of Transport, hard talk, I guess.
Hard copy.
Hard copy, I guess. And that question of blaming past leaders for the challenges of today, or, those challenges being the reason why we are here today. And so one of the key things that, for me, leadership should provide is that must have a very strong capacity to analyze what the issues have been, understanding what the problems are. It's part of leadership because at the end of the day, the society we are in, the challenges we face today is one that requires transformation. And so therefore we need transformational leadership. And for transformational leadership to happen, it means there must be a very strong understanding of what the challenges are. You cannot put up solutions to challenges that you don't know what they are. And so for me, one of the things is about how Nigerians are able to communicate the challenges that we have as a country, because that's the starting point for providing leadership that can transform some of these challenges. And so for 2022, 2023, as we move closer, those are some of the things that we must, at the initial, begin to ask people questions about. There are a lot of challenges in the country around how we have managed our politics, how we have managed our diversity. All of those issues are key in ensuring that, okay, you are not just coming to tell me that, these are the challenges of security, these are the challenges of the economy, this is how we are going to deal. No, you must be able to articulate it in a way that provides a clear insight into how these challenges have emerged. Of course, there are researches, people have talked about it, but from a personal point of view, from a transformational point of view, where you are vying for public office, where we are going to trust you with public resources, where we are going to trust you with managing this whole chaos and mess that we are in, then you must be able to tell us where we're coming from and how you're going to deal with that. And for me, that's the first step about what we are going to, how we are going to deal with the challenge of leadership. And that brings me to the question of what then is transformational leadership for Nigeria? Because whether we like it or not, the kind of leadership that is required to take us out of the challenges that we presently are, because of course we know the state of infrastructure, insecurity. Nigeria is presently the poverty capital of the world. So if you must deal with that, are you going to keep on doing the same things that have been done before? We have seen that our politics have been built around recycling, So people are stuck with ideas. People are stuck with a certain way of managing the politics to achieve whatever goals or vision they have for the country. So if you bring on those same characteristics in terms of how you intend to deal with these challenges, then I am very sure we are not going to make so much of a progress, because where we are now is a product of this politics. It's a product of the kind of power negotiations that happen. So how are Nigerians going to think through all of these and listen to that person that is able to articulate a different perspective around all of this? Of course, nothing is new, but we must chart a different route. There are a lot of opportunities, and for every country, times like this are moments where giant leaps are taken. And so we must be able to put that on the table.
Well, we'll see how that happens. Kenneth is not alone with us this morning. We're also being joined virtually by a number of other guests. We have, excuse me, Toye Sobande, who is a strategic leadership consultant. He's a lawyer, and also President Stevens Leadership Consultancy, member International Leadership Association, and is a doctoral candidate in strategic leadership at Regent University in the United States. You're welcome to the program, Mr. Sobande.
Thank you. Good morning and Merry Christmas, or compliments of the season.
Compliments of the season to you too. Simi Fajamirokun is also with us this morning. She is a managing partner, Acropolis Consulting, and former aspirant for the House of Reps in 2019. You're also welcome to the program this morning, Simi.
Thank you very much for having me. Compliments of the season.
I wish you the same. Well, interesting conversation we've started to have with Kenneth, who's here in our studios in Abuja, who's saying we need to be interested in the processes in 2022, because that's what's going to throw up the candidates whom Nigerians will vote for in 2023. Let me start with you, Simi, because you have been a part of the process before now, in 2019. What was it like when you tried to, contest, when you were thrown up as one of the candidates to be voted into office in 2019?
Well, as an aspirant, not a candidate, it was a very interesting experience, but it wasn't new because I've worked as a political consultant in our democracy for the past 10 years. I've worked with, so from a state level politics to national level politics to local government politics. I mean, I've been able to see across the different spectrum. And for me, I would say it gave me more hope than I've ever had in this country before. Though the last day of the primary elections were botched because of the indecision of the midnight of the primary elections, we were told we were going to change from indirect primaries to direct primaries. But outside of that, that scuttle of the process at that dying hour, the process was pretty interesting. Like I said, I left that experience more hopeful about politics in Nigeria than I've ever been before. I don't look like a typical politician. I don't sound like a politician. I ran in the FCT and I wasn't from the FCT. So a lot of people didn't even know. Initially, people were actually questioning if it was legal for me to run in a state that is not my state of origin. I got that question probably, 8 out of 10 times. So that let us know that even we, although we're clamoring for change, we want change, we don't really even understand what our politics is in Nigeria. So what was handed to us from 99 is the way that we've carried on without actually actively engaged. So when we don't actively engage, you can see the questions where, oh, you're not Muslim, how can you be running in the northern parts of Nigeria? Or your state of origin is from Ondo, how can you be running in the FCT? And these were from learned folks. I found that the more interesting that the people of the grassroots have more of an understanding of how politics works than my colleagues and in the workplace or in the business world. And like I said, I found it very interesting. You said an introduction. In your introduction was the process. Should we be interested in the process of our politics? Absolutely. Because by the time we get to general election, we literally are usually stuck between a rock and a hard place, typically between two bad choices. I think as a people, we need to be more interested in party politics because that is the main election, because then you have the luxury of choice. But I think we're robbed of choice when we look away from our primary election and everyone is just focused on the general election. So for instance, when trying to fundraise for a primary election, you find most people, particularly in the private sector, tell you, go and get your ticket. When you win the ticket of your party, then we'll support you. And that needs to actually be the reverse. Because if those who believe in your values, believe in your style of leadership, believe in what you stand for, they actually should bring out the funds during your primary elections, and your general elections will almost always take care of itself to a certain point because people want to people like the winning team. So when you get your ticket, especially if you're in a major party, you most likely will find it much easier to crowdfund or to source for funding. So a lot of the erroneous perception that we have towards politics in Nigeria, I found out from running myself. So for instance, funding was a major issue, not for me, but it was a major issue for people to fund a primary election because they felt the general election was a main election. Wrong. The process of election, people didn't really know what indirect primaries meant, what direct primaries meant. And for me, if more people got engaged, the democracy is about numbers. We don't have enough numbers of people who actually know better on the political party system. Because if you had numbers in the political party system, you won't have the madness of changing the mode of an election at midnight of the election from indirect to direct or direct to indirect. It just wouldn't happen.
Well, Simi, just listening to you, I think that, perhaps interviewing you would take the whole of the 2 hours of this show, because I'm sure you have, you definitely will have the experience worth a book to tell about your experience. But let me quickly come to Toye Sobande talking about being interested in the primaries itself. I mean, Simi has already said that we need the primaries themselves at the elections. That's where we have the luxury of picking a leader that will eventually come out at the end of the day, who will be agreeable to all. The question is, how do we begin to get involved in primaries, and how do we pressure political parties, to throw up the sort of candidates that we eventually state as the qualities that we want to see in a leader that will lead us, I don't want to say out of where we are, but to the Nigeria that we desire.
Thank you. I actually enjoyed Simi's contributions, and I was quite amazed at how she arranged her thought process to land at this point, which I think is very fantastic. The first problem is this: our narrative and our language has to change. And how do I mean? We are inherently focused on a leader, or focused on grooming or electing a leader whom we think will change everything, throw out his magic wand, and everything will be perfect with our country. But that is not true. I agree we should be interested in the process. But the process is not about evolving a leader through a particular political party of choice. To solve this problem, my proposition is for us to focus on developing an effective leadership system right from the grassroots down to the local and down to the national lead. And that can happen between now and next year, actually. It's a long-term project. Aside changing our narrative and our language, we should also change our perspective about these issues. That solving Nigeria's problem is not just going to be with one election year. It's not going to happen in a tenure, a 4-year term, or 2 tenures, or 2 terms of a president or a governor. It's going to take us, the decadence did not happen in 10 years. It did not happen in 20 years. So we should be prepared for a long-term project. Hence why I said we need to develop a leadership system. And what do I mean by a leadership system? We often confuse the word leader with leadership. Having a title or holding political positions does not necessarily qualify someone for leadership. And it does not actually make you a leader. You can be a ruler. But back to our electoral process. If we do not have an effective leadership system, Simi and many other Nigerians who are genuinely interested in the transformation of this country will keep experiencing that frustration when they get to enter into those political parties. Because some people literally own the political party. And their sense of entitlement is that, look, we've invested our resources into the political parties. We have our interests, we have our ideologies, even though they are not spelled out.
There's something that you said now that interests me, if you don't mind me butting in very quickly. You said that, you kind of drew a difference between a leader and a ruler. Perhaps there is a need to have that understanding. Who is a leader and who is a ruler? Which one has been predominant in our nation? And how do people begin to identify those qualities so that when it comes to the time to choose, they know who to choose or what to look out for?
Thank you. Thank you, Ayo, for saying that, because I was going to drive home that point. We've been used to rulership so much that we do not identify, when a leader shows up, we think is a saint and is somebody that is very special with special abilities. when you're so used to something that is bad and something good shows up, you think this person is special. He has special abilities, special skills. This is it. What differentiates those two individuals, the ruler and the leader, is this. In my doctoral research and over the years of research and work in different capacity, I have come to define leadership with just 2-3 words. And this is it. Leadership is taking responsibility. I'm going to stop at that. There are other things after that. The ruler does not take responsibility for the problems and for the solution. The ruler rather feels entitled that it is what I say, based on what I know, that should happen, not what the people know. And the body language of those who are in rulership in this nation communicates that clearly. They don't need to tell us that expressly, the body language. Look at the issues we've been debating over the past few weeks, from signing electoral bill to this, the body language. That body language is a major communication terminology. And if you want to know a ruler, see the way a ruler communicates is different from the way a leader communicates. A leader communicates to seek understanding with the people he leads, is to engender trust and buy-in from the people he leads. The ruler does not need your trust. He does not need your buy-in. So when you want to go to the post to elect someone, check out for the body language, not only of that individual, or people around them, and the body language of the political system they evolved from. Are they people who listen and who engage people in the conversation? Are they communicative? Are they consensus-oriented? Are they benevolent in their approach to leadership? Are they populist in their orientation? And I wrote a book titled The Leadership Myth: Why Leadership Development Principles Do Not Work in Sub-Saharan Africa. And this is a 7-year project. I started this project on a visit on holiday to Abu Dhabi. And I kept asking myself, I flew from London to Abu Dhabi, and that was my first time of flying in this airline that very massive struck. I'm trying to remember the name now. Awesome, beautiful experience. I landed in Abu Dhabi. I enjoyed my time. And I kept asking myself a question. How did these people transform this nation at about the same time Nigeria started? Similar with Singapore, how did they transform this nation to become? That question led me to reading books about their leadership. And that's how I came across the book written by the Sheikh, titled My Vision. It opened my eyes to understanding that it is not, because the way most leaders communicate, they make the whole system about them, about their interests, and not about the people. Then two, they always communicate within the range of their tenure. 4 years, 8 years, second term. Everything is about the tenure. That is not leadership. That is rulership. Okay. Anyone who communicates what they want to achieve within 4 years is unrealistic. Okay. Anyone who communicates what they think the nation can become within 8 years is equally unrealistic. That is Mr. Sobande,
there's so much to unpack in all of these conversations, and we will have significant time to talk more about some of these things, including what the young generation would want to bring to the table, given the opportunity. But let me take this to Mr. Koineme just before we go on the break. Now, do you agree with some of the things that you have heard from both parties, especially concerning who a ruler is and who a leader is?
Of course, I agree completely, because as they have put it succinctly, the challenges of being a leader and leadership are two different things completely. And of course, we know that we are coming from a history where decisions that border on how society is run is taken by a group of persons, and of course our military history. And so that has permeated into our democratic experience, where people continue to elude themselves that they have this whole, not necessarily taking responsibility, but thinking that they owe, thinking that the people owe them some sort of allegiance for becoming leaders. for taking up public office. And this, as my friend has said, this question of body language, it is very clear that people do not see our democratic experience from one that should be inclusive. People see our democratic experience from one that should serve the interest of a few. We are doing you a favor. And so this is a big challenge. This is something that we must be able to discern in 2020. And as he has said, the articulation of a vision, you must be able to talk to the people must be able to understand where you're coming from and where you're going.
On that, Mr.
There's something
Okoye,
that happens in this country because of the
the
failure of public services, for example.
Just 1 second. On that question that you raised, okay. My apologies. That question that you raised on articulating vision, who should be taking the lead? I think we'll begin with that when we return from this break. Please stay with us. The leadership question. That's what we're talking about this morning. Let me take this to Simi Fajemiroko-Ajayi, who is an entrepreneur and a politician. Now, you listened to what Governor Obaseki said just before we took that Christmas greeting. First of all, what's your take? What's your perspective, your thoughts on the words of the governor?
I agree with the fact that the set of politicians from '99 have done. I don't like to talk in absolute terms. The ones who have done well have done well, but with everything, we're 20 years. We celebrated 20 years of democracy, military-free, the democracy-free from military interruption, and the truth is, there was really not that much to celebrate, except for, because the number one task of government is to secure and safeguard the lives of those, within it. We're currently having security issues. We currently have some economic challenges. And it's not a bad thing. I see, the politics is the art of the possible. And so in '99, the set of the classroom of politicians that presented themselves in '99 did show the art of the possible. So we went from an extreme of where people could not talk and where, civil society blossomed. We can see industries that took off. And even now, from the entertainment to the gig economy. So not everything is absolutely bad, but they have definitely, anything that goes on for 20 years without change will definitely begin to, the law of entropy will begin to turn on itself. And so the set that brought in the MTNs, the opening of the economy, are also the ones kind of strangling the country in terms of ideas and in terms of even the economy. But there's not a lot going on in terms of wealth creation. So the boom we saw from '99, possibly in the economy, to the mid 2000s. I mean, we're struggling, but this struggle is not a death sentence. This struggle is really a clamor for a new set of politicians that will take us for the next 20 years. So for me, when I see the problems that plague our country, and again, I just see it as we need a new injection of ideas, of new party players, because there's no football game and there's no basketball game, or there's really no world sports where you have one player or a set of players playing for 20 years and they'll continue to play with the same level of interest, energy, performance. Is just not possible. So if businesses are driven by human capital, if nations are driven by human capital, politics is driven by human capital. Where are the new guys at the new set of where are the new classroom of politicians? Not the whiners, not the ones that say Nigeria, we're done,
I don't know. I hope we'll have you back shortly because one question that I want to put to you is, do you think we have the next class ready to take over just yet, given the level of distrust between government and especially the young people? You also heard the Governor Obaseki make reference to that, and the president of AFDB has often said the same thing about getting youths ready, getting them interested, and taking hold of the gauntlet. But Mr. Sobande, the question that we posed earlier, just before we took that break, is along the line of vision casting. There are those who believe or who opine that the challenge with Nigeria, and I think you also referenced it, in that politicians, when they come to office, they are only looking at 1 term or 2 terms, and that's it. But there are those who argue that the challenge Nigeria is having is successive because there is no national ethos, national vision that goes from one generation to another, to another, to another. There are those who reference the fact that after every military dispensation had been pushed out with advocacy without a clear national vision of what we want to achieve with the politics that we begin to play. So in terms of vision casting, who should be taking the lead? Because at the end of the day, it's still the same set of politicians who are in office that are in office.
Well, thank you very much, Ayo. If you watch within the same political parties, one person comes into office, sets out a vision, and he leaves. The same political party fields another candidate to continue with the tenure of the other person, and yet that same person from the same political party completely erase and remove the vision statement or whatever objective, whatever goals, whatever achievements the other person in his own political party had already accomplished, and erase it completely. Remove everything completely. So I gave that as an example to let us understand that sometimes our framework, our reference point of what we call vision, because any vision that does not leave a leader is not a vision. It's just something temporary. It's just a temporary wish. So for us to have a national vision, our national vision must draw on our collective identity, not necessarily our ethnic diversity. And because sometimes we overemphasize the diversity at the expense of our collective identity. Collective identity is that one thing that is primary, that's of primary importance to anyone in government, is the general welfare of the people. And like Simi said, the security of the people. Then they are also concerned about their future, their safety, their sense of identity. So our national vision, our national goal should be driven by those who claim to have the leadership capacity to lead us. They should help coordinate. They should help aggregate the ideas Nigerians are bringing forward. Nigerians are brilliant people. I sat down once at an event where the vice president was speaking and where he confessed to the fact that he used to assume before he got into politics and got into governance that how come we have so many fantastic ideas that are not being implemented, that people are not bringing forward, until he got to government and saw that they are being bombarded daily with fantastic ideas by Nigerians and from Nigerians. So the question is, what is now responsible for the disconnect? It's not that we lack capacity for vision. It's not that we lack capacity, but what our vision has always been about is that it is not set out on a system or a structure that is successive. And that's why I recommended at the very beginning that for us to make progress and move forward as a nation, we need to develop a leadership system that operates right from the grassroots to the local level and down to the... For example, now, our current structure in this nation cannot sustain any visionary leadership and cannot assist any visionary to succeed. And why do I say that? Because the local governments are still not independent. They are still within the control of a few people. When I was growing up, local government politics was so important that that's where people evolve from. Leaders evolve from the local government. They are tested, they are trusted, they are known. That's where they groom vision from. Or that's where they groom. So when you look at our educational system is in such a way right now that any visionary leadership that you develop or that you try to sell to Nigerians is not sustainable. Why? Because our educational system is not designed to produce an exceptional Nigerian. It's not designed to produce an exceptional mind that can conceptualize and innovate things or work with ideas.
Mr. Sobande, what is missing?
That's what I'm highlighting. What is missing is basically competence, leadership competences. People assume that because they have held a position before, you have been local government chairman before, you have been governor before, that makes you a leader. No. What is missing is the leadership capacity, leadership competence.
Is that leadership competence supposed to be in the educational system that you mentioned?
It is one of the institutions that helps develop that competence. In fact, it is one of the most important institutions that helps develop leadership competence. Because that is where value systems are entrenched in the mind of a young person. Value systems of hard work, of honesty, of integrity. But the moment we treat that institution with levity, we talk down on the lecturers, talk down on the teachers, we don't cater for their welfare, they get into a position of compromise where they begin to abuse the students that they're supposed to be grooming. They abuse them financially, they abuse them morally, they abuse them physically, and until recent times, they abuse them sexually as well. And we can see what is going on with cultism in secondary school now. Look at the recent incident of the 12-year-old boy. That is the most important.
My apologies. I'll come to Mr. Koineme in a moment, but I want to ask you as well, this, Mr. Sobande. Is that part of the reasons why you said leadership principles do not work in sub-Saharan Africa?
Thank you very much. It's part of one of the reasons, because whilst we are so much interested in Western ideologies, we've adopted all the Western ideologies and Western principles we've known. In fact, our system of government is built around these Western ideologies and Western mode of governance. But it does not work because it's not peculiar, it's not in tune with our cultural views and our cultural orientation. There are certain things that are peculiar to our history as a nation that we can build our leadership capacity on. Leadership is not foreign to us in this part of the world. It was not imported by the Western guys into our part of the world. No, we have leadership system already starting from the family, starting from the, if you check our history, if you check our culture, leadership was part of it. How were we doing it then? We had a leadership that had checks and balances. If you remember the story of the Oyomesis, where they appoint the kings and they checkmate a king that is becoming tyrannical. They have a structure of accountability. They have a structure of youth participation. They have a structure where there is succession plan. They know, look at the kingship structure in Ibadan, for example. Everybody knows who the next king will be. There's a succession plan. Therefore, there's opportunity for grooming, there's opportunity for growth, there's opportunity for education, there's opportunity, and everybody knows, and they prepare the person. That's what our culture provides. So right now, we are throwing and recycling people, like Simi said, because there's no training structure, there's no governance school, there's no leadership school where people are prepared, are trained for leadership based on our cultural identity.
Okay. Well, Mr. Koineme, given these, I suspect that you may agree to some of the things that Mr. Sobande has talked about, but given this, do you see the young generation being fully prepared for the next dispensation as leaders?
Of course, young people have demonstrated their capacity to lead in different fields of endeavor, as we have seen, be it in politics, in the economy, business, and all of that. And so, so the question is, how do you evolve a structure, a politics that harnesses all of this in terms of bringing young people into the fold, creating an inclusive process, a participatory process that gets young people to be part of the discussions in political parties. Because, of course, we know that political parties, beyond the struggle or beyond the contestation for power, are also supposed to be a vehicle for articulating new ideas, for articulating alternatives to dealing with the challenges in society. But we know that this engine has completely negated that aspect of, harnessing ideas, articulating and aggregating what people are thinking in terms of their understanding of the challenges in society. And so that is where we must begin to take interest in how do we mobilize or how do we organize with young people in a way that they are able to participate effectively in that political process from a point of empowerment, not from a point where they have been accustomed to. We were in Lagos with Simi about 3 weeks ago, where we had a convergence with young aspirants across the Southwest. And you could see the kind of conversation that was happening in those spaces. Do political parties present those sort of opportunities for young people to articulate what their creative minds are thinking of? Because we must rise above what Aya just said. Those, our ethnic diversities, they do not in any way represent who we are collectively.
I'm just wondering,
because the challenge is this.
Yeah.
As individuals, the state has failed. And so people, for example, if I, sitting here now, happen to get very sick, there's a huge possibility that those that will rise to my help are the people from my community. And so, because of the failure of the state, you will begin to see where self-help through ethnic gatherings and social gatherings. And so people begin to build their loyalty around those structures. And so if we are looking for a new leader, we must take those issues around how we respond to challenges in society to where the primary field of contestation of ideas are, which is, for example, in a democratic setting, is the political parties. So we must I
was just about to say the program which IAGA Africa, I believe, convened the Convergence 3.0. Don't you think it should have been happening within political parties?
Of course, but one of the things that we must recognize is that after the passage of the Not Too Young to Run law, it's important that collectively as a people, we do not now sit back and wait for institutions that are not ready to take on some of this responsibility. We have to force them to take those responsibilities. And what young people have demonstrated by holding the convergence and all of that is that new politics that we are talking about, that new way of doing things. Because we had in the room over 200 young people from different political divides. And they sat together and talked about the challenges they face in political parties, sat down and talked about what their aspirations are for the country.
Were the challenges similar?
Of course, the challenges have always been there, but what has not been happening is that an inclusive space that provides alternatives. And so that's what the Convergence is doing. And the Convergence is acting as an alternative, as a model that can be taken up by political parties to aggregate the concerns of young people, to aggregate their creative energies, and to aggregate their plans for the country into political capital. Because if you don't do that, we continue to play this old politics that has not taken us anywhere. Because whether you like it or not, we are in a world where ideas rule. Ideas rule. So what the Abu Dhabis of this world, what the Singapores of this world have done is translating ideas into vision and practicalizing it. And some of the things that also need to happen. At that convergence, we had a conversation with Dr. Jumoke, who is presently heading the Vice President's initiative on ease of doing business. And one of the things she talked about was the fact that
That's PEBEC, the Presidential Enabling Council.
Yeah. So while you are out there trying to put in structures that enables change to happen, there are 1,000,001 things undermining all of that. And so for change to happen, you must be able to negotiate values through all of these structures. Because if you don't do that, what will happen is that you sit on your high pedestal and think that by articulating some of these things, and that's where you see the disconnect between what government says it is achieving and what the people actually think is happening. Because at that level, people are as he said, people are bringing in proposals, people are bringing in ideas, they are putting it on the table, and governments, they're supporting all of those ideas, articulating them in policy documents and all of that. But that's where it ends. There are a whole lot of structures that needs to be dealt with. And that's where leadership takes, because leadership sees the whole picture. And we must build a system that helps the leader to see all of those pictures. And that's where that question of decentralization and local governance comes in. So where you have people...
I do know that yesterday we had a very long conversation as well on direct and indirect primaries. I understand that Simi is no longer with us online. It would have been interesting to know what her perspective will be on this direct and indirect primaries conversation. But, you know, this is part of what they think will get the people more involved in politics. So far, so good. The Electoral Act amendment bill has suffered a setback as the president has vetoed it, but it'll be interesting to see what happens in the coming days. But what are your thoughts? I do not know if you have been interested, if you've followed this conversation on the Electoral Act amendment bill, Toye, and what you think about whether or not the conversation around direct and indirect primaries, even though we have been told that's not the most important aspect of the bill, how do you think that is going to shape who is eventually thrown up, or the people who are eventually thrown up at different levels in the political parties? Do you think it will make any difference at all?
At all. Not because I want to sound very pessimistic in any way. It is not going to change anything. It's the same script. We're just running through the script. And as a people, we've learned to be very reactionary and give knee-jerk reaction to things, rather than actually take a proactive step towards it. The body language has always been there. I've heard people say it on several of your shows here, that they were not surprised, that they were expecting that the bill would be vetoed. So the question is, something took that long. There's a pattern to the style of rulership of those who are in power. We should have studied that pattern long enough to take a proactive action or advocacy, like Kenneth was suggesting, towards making this a national conversation consistently, such that people at the grassroots and at all levels are able to come up with ideas, come up with things that will influence the thought of those in rulership, and they'll be able to actually get the feedback from Nigerians. But everybody kept quiet. We were waiting. Then when the result comes out, we're now reacting. Nothing is going to happen. We are just going to continue to react. And those who are in rulership in this nation, they know us. They understand the people they are leading or they are ruling. They understand the people they are ruling. They understand the psyche of the people they are ruling. They know we all go to social media, shout, make noise, react. Nothing is going to happen. It's still going to be the same script. So the question is to follow course with the likes of Kenneth and what is being done right now. And I love the question you asked, Mape, when you said that meeting that was held for the Southwest guys, youths in Lagos a while back, should have been something that should be taking place within the political parties. And that is the idea I think our generation have the opportunity to begin to sell to political parties right now. We need to begin to actually penetrate the political parties and begin to campaign for an effective leadership system and effective leadership structure that addresses this direct and indirect system of, electing our representatives. Until that is done, it will not become a national culture. What we have seen that has become a national culture, where individuals will veto a thing, or where a group of people will sit down and just come up with their own opinion without regard for the interest of the people will stop. It will continue if we don't do that. So we have an opportunity right now to infiltrate into the political system. We have the numbers, but what are we doing with the numbers? We're on social media shouting. We should leave the social media and go straight into the political parties, study their ideology, study their philosophy. I still have the manifesto of UPN. I still have it in my library, and I read it. So I'm asking the current
okay, Toye, we'll be asking you what you read in the manifesto of UPN shortly, but let me quickly ask Simi, who I understand is back. Simi, it's good to have you back. I'm wondering, this debate over direct and indirect primaries, I do know that you said that you had an experience once where the mode of primaries was changed overnight. Do you think that it will make a significant difference if we're restricted to just one form of primaries, which is the direct primaries?
Thank you very much, and I apologize for the internet issue. Honestly, again, we've been talking about systems, and this, which is why I like the quote. You know, we don't rise to the level of our goals; we fall to the level of our systems. So, whether it's direct or indirect primaries, what systems do we have around them? So, like I was saying before, I logged off. You know, the key indicator of progress is brain power, right? It's human capital. And how much are we investing in the human capital in the political system? Why am I going in this direction? Who are the secretaries in the political party? Do they know how to use a laptop? Do they use a laptop? Because when INEC asks the political parties to submit something, the official holder of the post usually is written out on a piece of paper. How do you collect signatures? Is somebody writing on a piece of paper and then going around collecting, signatures? So everything is so in the political party system is so brick and mortar that is where the perversion comes from. So direct primaries, indirect primaries. When you say direct primaries, how many people? Who are the data scientists in the political party? Where's the data stored in political parties? If they're on exercise books, there is no way you can actually have, right, an accurate number of party members. When you ask a lot of political parties, they throw bogus numbers. Show us who the card-carrying members, how many you are. Show the database. I can tell you for a fact, most parties don't have it. So when you say direct primaries,
a little more attention to that part.
Yes, because show me your party members, then I can tell you, okay, you can do direct primaries. Because if you can do direct primaries, if you don't even know how many members you are in your political party, guess what? You have already corrupted your political process, your election process. Why? Who is going to vote? Cat, dog, mouse? How do we know you're a member of the party? From my experience, when they change it to direct primaries, they said, okay, no problem. How will you know who is a member of the party to vote in the primary elections tomorrow? They said, oh, we will appoint the youth leader. They will nominate, they will see who their members are. We'll tell you who the woman leaders to stand in front. They will see who their members are. We will also call the ward chairman to also use his eyes to see who the members of the party. I mean, it's ridiculous. So when you're arguing direct or indirect, right, let's talk about data in political parties. Do they actually have the data? How does INEC collect data? Is it in written form? Is it in electronic form? How is it stored? How is it managed to make sure it's not manipulated? If you go with indirect primaries, the same issue. Who are delegates? How are they selected? I don't really have a problem with indirect or direct problem. I have a problem with a lack of clarity of mission. Because if your mission for elections are not clear, your outcome is botched. Your outcome is going to be corrupted. Your outcome is going to be perverse. And this is why what we're seeing is we focus too much on individuals and personalities. What we're really seeing is a lack of a system within the political parties that leaves so much room for the process to be corrupted. So I don't think political parties do sleep and wake up and say, oh, how are we going to be the most corrupt or the most foolish election? How are we going to run the most, inept or inefficient election possible? I don't think they wake up to do that. I just don't think there's systems in place. So I think if they're going to, if going back to my statement, if brain power is the main primary generator of progress, then what is the brain power behind our political parties? Not Ankara, not dancing, not sharing watches and sunglasses or food or 500 naira. Where is the brain power in our political parties? I think once we have that discussion, then we can actually have a discussion. Do we want indirect? Because then we talk about a matter of style. But I'm saying we don't even have a culture of efficiency on our political parties. We don't. For us to even, I think one of the issues is that we think we have arrived in our democracy. We actually have not. It's the problem. The reason we're not learning politically is that we assume we actually have a democracy. What we have is a hodgepodge, something that just allows us to say we came up with candidates, and it's a false dilemma to say that Nigeria will continue to have election irregularities. I believe absolutely the opposite. I believe Nigeria has the opportunity to show Africa what elections look like. And we have a semblance of it because Nigeria is a big country. So for the elections that we do have, there's some great things that do happen because it's not actually easy, right, to deliver elections. But let's put our systems in place. Data, data, data. If you want to do direct primaries, no problem. Show us your numbers. Show us your card-carrying members. Not a piece of paper. Many, during my experience,
Simi, I did say earlier that you do have an experience that should be documented in a book and could take the whole of the 2 hours that we have on this show. But we're totally out of time, and I'm sure that you've given us enough to ponder upon as Nigerians and also members of political parties and those who are also outside of the political parties who need to be very interested in what is happening within political parties. Thank you very much for your contributions this morning. You've been listening to Simi Fajamirokun Ajayi, who is a managing partner at Acropolis Consulting and also a former aspirant for the House of Representatives in 2019. We have also been speaking here in our Abuja studios with Kenneth Okoineme, who is a member strategy team of the Not Too Young to Run movement. He's also been a national advisor, People for Change, with Action Aid. Thank you so much for your thoughts this morning.
It's my pleasure.
We're hoping that the convergence idea, you take it within the political parties as well, and let us see.
That's where we're heading to.
Yes, well, let us see how that, happens within the coming days. And we've also been speaking with Toye Sobande, who is a strategic leadership consultant and a lawyer as well. He's also the president of Stevens Leadership Consultancy and member International Leadership Association and a doctoral candidate in strategic leadership, Regent University in the United States. He joined us via Zoom from London. Toye, thank you so much for being a part of the program this morning. Well, you can bet that we intend to keep this issue on leadership on the front burner. We will not let go and we will not let up until we begin to see the sort of people who we believe can lead us to the Nigeria of our dreams. At this point, we take a break and we'll be back in a moment with another topic. Please stay with us.